Hit.
All right.
All right, what up, sports fanatics? We want to welcome you to our latest episode of From the Grid to the Rim and everything in between as it relates to sports. I'm one of your co-hosts, Darylyn Brown, along with my co-host, Big Kim Fry. And back with us are co-host Monty Brown, who was under the weather last week, and our other co-host, Jack Hudson, who just came reaping off the fruits of his labor from a wonderful golf trip. I hope it was wonderful, Jack. So as you know, this is just a channel where we just like to have fun talking about sports and anything that we want to make relevant to, in our point of view, of course. And the latest episode is just a focus on the NCAA tournament, giving you thoughts on this championship game between UConn and SDSU, San Diego State University. So just to kind of kick it off on Saturday, just on a recap note, we saw UConn pretty much dominate Miami. I really was kind of in the back of my mind, I knew UConn would win, but I was hoping Miami would give them more of a fight. But unfortunately, UConn was pretty much too much. And then we saw a wonderful game, man, a game for the ages between FAU and San Diego State.
Yes.
Man, that was a game. And so we saw that take fruition with a buzzer beater, of course. And I think I almost called that in our last episode.
Yeah.
I said, man, I think this is going to be a buzzer beater. This is going to be a close game. Because
I think you did call
I had
it.
San Diego State squeaking out of this game, and that's pretty much what happened. So without further ado, that's just a small recap, but we're just going to go ahead and dive into yesterday's action as we saw UConn and San Diego State pretty much match up. That's who I picked to go to the championship game. I think I think we both had the same picks of both UConn and San Diego State going to the game, the championship game as well. In that game, you saw the first ever championship between a 4 and a 5. I was very proud of San Diego State those first 10 minutes. They really did their best to lock up UConn's flow of play. But when that 8:50 mark came, you saw UConn began to pull away. It was that last 10 minutes where UConn just pretty much found their groove, and San Diego State pretty much had no answers. But credit UConn for a good team ball the first half, distributing the ball very well. You had like 8 different players with baskets. They created opportunities to score. I mean, when you're feeling it, pretty much. And to be honest, I'm surprised that the score wasn't a lot worse. But turnovers and rebounds seem to keep things close with San Diego State that first half. You saw UConn had some missed layup opportunities, but yet UConn was shooting 50% from the field, 38% from three-point range, 20 rebounds, which is pretty much a recipe for a blowout. But yet San Diego State, they're rebounding. They were rebounding too. UConn had about 8 turnovers. San Diego State had about 7 turnovers as well, at least that first half. And then the second half gets here, and that's pretty much, it was all UConn to say the least. At least towards the end, you saw the first 10 minutes, you saw the refs pretty much let them play with the way I saw it. You saw some missed foul calls here and there on both ends, but it was all came down to executing, those first 10 minutes. And then you saw both teams continuously rebounding well, but just not executing. And when you thought UConn would pull away, you saw San Diego State pretty much chip away. San Diego State needed stops, though, but they couldn't get those stops. And they got it at least down to 5 to single digits with under 8 minutes. And then San Diego State pretty much went on, you saw when they went on that 9-0 run, and then, they cut it down around that 5-minute mark, I believe, and then they just couldn't execute after that 5 minutes. UConn pretty much took over, went on a 9-0 run, and that pretty much solidified the game. I did my best on Central Time to stay up for the game because it was such a late game start. But at the end of the day, I just knew UConn was pretty much too much. They were too much. They pretty much dominated on both ends of the floor that second half, in my opinion, even though the execution was a little bit poor to start with in the second half. they pretty much, they were just too much. And San Diego State had no offensive firepower to capitalize. When you saw UConn feeling it, they were stroking that ball from 3-pointer, and it was like they didn't even shed a tear about it. They just knew it was going in. So it was just too much UConn, as I predicted, as I would have predicted. And credit to Dan Hurley's team, man. It was just pretty much a dominant performance those last 3 minutes.
Yes.
Yeah, I completely agree. The one thing I had right this whole entire tournament was I had UConn in the Final Four. I didn't have them winning the whole thing, but my original bracket had UConn
Oh, wow.
in the Final Four, so I had that. Everything else, I pretty much
that's pretty good.
My bracket was busted pretty bad. Purdue, of course, was the biggest bust, but yeah, UConn did dominate. To piggyback off what Dwayne said, they did shoot 50% in the first half, and San Diego State only shot 29%. That's one thing I noticed. But like Dwayne said, to start off the game, I mean, they were on fire. I think that they made 4 out of their first 5 shots. Then they went like 0 for like 12 or 13. They went on a stretch where they just couldn't score, and they were only getting to the free throw line a couple of times. So that was the biggest thing I saw. Another thing I noticed, which me and Dwayne both mentioned on the last show, was UConn is just balanced. They had balanced scoring all the way around.
Mm-hmm.
Sonogo, their big man, did really well again. He led them. But the one guy that showed up that was a surprise, and I know Monty said something on Facebook yesterday, was the El Paso kid, the guard. He had 19 points. That was impressive. He came out of nowhere. And then their main 3-point shooter, Hawkins, had a good tournament all tournament. He had 16 points. So they were just balanced again. Every game they've been balanced. And what makes UConn so tough is they're just as good as they are offensively. They're really good on defense. And like Dwayne was saying, San Diego basically had no shots. They had to fight for every single point they got. They were having a hard time because UConn is they were really sound defensively. So I was impressed with UConn. And another thing I noticed in the UConn game was in the second half, which helped UConn out when they were struggling a little bit, like Dwayne mentioned. They got to the free throw line early. They got into the penalty or the bonus with 12 minutes to go in the second half. So that helped them out tremendously. They kept on going every time, San Diego State would cut into it. They kept on getting to the free throw line when they weren't hitting shots. So I thought that was interesting too, because UConn was 24 out of 27 from a free throw line in the game, and San Diego State was 15 out of 20. So, but like Dwayne said, man, San Diego State was still tough though. Right when I thought they were getting blown out, they start chipping away at it, and they get down to 5 points. And I was like, oh man, UConn, this is the first time that they've actually had a game the whole entire tournament. What's UConn gonna do? And then Hawkins, man, just drills a 3, Mr. Clutch. He gets them right back up 8 points, and I think they get fouled. Next possession, they're right back up like 9 or 10 points, so they got back in control of the game. But give credit to San Diego State, first ever Final Four. They played well. I really like their coach, Brian Dutcher. He's a good coach under the Steve Fisher coaching tree. So I really like. I like Brian Dutcher. I like the way he carried himself. I even like what he said after the game was over. He was still smiling, and he was just. Of course, he was a little bit disappointed, but he was proud of his team, and he's like, "Hey, man, we had nothing to be ashamed of, man." So I just like the way he carried himself, and he's a good coach for that team, that San Diego State team.
I agree. Very, very class. Very class act.
But yeah, that was my take on the game, the championship game.
Yeah. There is really no shame in losing to a good, like you mentioned, like we've all mentioned, balanced team like UConn. What surprised me, what I took from it is how big they are. 2 big men, and
so big.
Really, San Diego State couldn't match up with that. I mean, the rebounding. UConn had way too many second chance rebounds, especially on the defensive end. They out-rebounded them on the defensive end by 8, 30-22, and that was big, especially with those big guys. Their bench, I mean, well-rounded team, well-coached team. I was impressed. Like Ken mentioned, our guy from El Paso really showed up. I mean, he made me nervous a little bit with the 3 turnovers at the beginning, but he's a ball handler. He's the floor general, and he led that team. well balanced. It's one thing I liked about that. What intrigued me about this matchup, out of the 22 million brackets that were done, 7,200 picked this matchup.
What?
What?
I did not know that.
Yes.
I think that's a lie.
Out of here.
No, it's not a lot. It's a very
Get the
small
freak
can't
outta
believe
here.
Out of 22, yeah, that's the ballpark
Wow.
figures. Out of 22
Listen,
million,
listen.
Yes.
They almost be living Vegas because they.
Right. 7,200, and that comes out to a 0.036% percentage, which is very, very small.
But still, those
But-
numbers
Wow.
sound bigger. But you're right. Still
Yeah,
small.
it sounds a lot bigger
big.
when I heard that. That's a ballpark figure. It's like a 0.40 or something like that, or 0.040, but it's small, which surprised me.
Golly, wow.
Yeah.
Woo.
Yeah, so most of
That's
those
crazy,
people
huh?
probably lived in San Diego or Connecticut somewhere, I'm sure.
Man, I mean, or what did they know that I don't know? You know?
Yeah, really.
Golly.
But
Somebody
yeah,
knows something.
yeah, San Diego had just no answer for Zanago. I was pretty much watching him the whole tournament. That guy's just too big, too strong, and yeah, there's no answers for him. And yeah, Hawkins was punched, couldn't miss at all. So yeah, UConn clearly the best team in the tournament, a team that I wasn't watching closely until this Final Four. And I was like, whoa, yeah, they're good. I mean, man, double-digit wins every time. So yeah, that's pretty much my take on that game.
Oh yeah, they too dominant down low. You know, Nago is just too tough
Yes.
down low. He's just you know, he's a beast down there, offense and defense, and so many rebounds for UConn, and you know, San Diego State got the rebounds too. It's just they couldn't score points like UConn did. You know, they had their chances, but they couldn't shoot the way UConn was. And then
Yes.
there for, you know, they started off on fire. They were up, what, 10-6 right at the beginning. Then
Yes.
all of a sudden the score was like, what, 24 to 10, you know, UConn was up. And the whole rest of the game, San Diego State's just trying to catch up. And I think they got tired at the end when they were only down by 5 or 6 points, you know, and they just got wore out, and they couldn't catch back up, and it killed them. And then they went down by what, 8 when that 3-pointer come down in
Oh,
by
yeah.
Hawkins, and there was like 3 minutes to go in the game, and you know, and UConn couldn't miss free throws. They were shooting the heck out of their free throws too, you know, and
Yes.
they were in the bonus early, so that kind of hurt San Diego State, especially if they got fouled. You know?
Yeah.
And a better team won too, you know. I mean, you look on paper, look at, I mean, 9 times out of 10, UConn's going to win that game.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, undefeated
Yes,
in
sir.
Well, I guess the question becomes, you know, for me, like, you know, I was really, when I was watching the game and I saw UConn starting to pull away, I started playing the what if game. What if FAU would have been in there? You know, what if, you know, what would the score be like? You know what I'm saying? You know, because we saw FAU, an offensive team, you know, go against San Diego State, a defensive team. And San Diego State could, you know, definitely score off turnovers and rebounds and capitalize on that. But we saw FAU was just, you know, good all around offensive team as well.
Yeah.
Do you think they would have matched up well with UConn? You know, when I started thinking about that, I think they would have matched up well as far as points. But and putting more points on the board and creating more opportunities to score. But I still think UConn would have won, but I'm just not sure. So I started playing the what if game because a lot of people that I spoke with, they said, man, FAU should have been in there. There was you know, refs blew this and refs blew that and all that stuff. Well, you could talk about that the whole dang tournament, and don't get me started. I'm still sour over that Creighton call, but no, I'll say that for another day. But nonetheless, I mean, but man, I mean, what if FAU was in there? You know what I'm saying? So,
Well,
and if you play the what if game, what if Miami would have upset UConn? Would they have beat San Diego State? Would they have not had enough firepower to beat San Diego State? My thought process, my wish would have been a all Florida
Florida
championship,
team,
Miami versus
FAU and Miami,
FAU.
yeah.
So I think FAU would have definitely hung tight as far as maybe points and been more offensive, maybe not as defensively, but offensively they would have. I think they would have, hit UConn where it hurt and kind of made it a competitive from an offensive standpoint. But defense wins championships, as they say, and I don't think maybe FAU would have they probably would have worn them down. And credit to UConn. Like I said, the big talking point about their whole team is that they have game on both ends of the court, both offensively and defensively. So you got to give Coach Dan Hurley, and like you said, those bigs, man. I mean, like I said, if you have two big men like that and scoring at will the way they were doing and creating opportunities and spreading that floor, for those shooters to stroke it, from half court or wherever they desired, then the game was over before it was even won.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's just kind of like my take on the what if factor.
To your point on FAU, I don't know if they would have beat them now, but they would have given them a good matchup because they have a couple of big men themselves.
Oh yeah.
One other stat that they did mention when I was watching the Final Four game, FAU had the highest scoring bench in the tournament at 37 points. For some reason, they didn't show up that game. The bench only had 15 points in the game, and San Diego State's had 27. But yeah, I think they would have. We may have saw a better game with FAU.
Yeah,
if their big guy would just score some free throws at the end, FAU would have freaking won that game.
Yes,
he missed 5 out of 6 free throws, and
yes,
that killed him at the end.
Yeah,
that hurt.
Oh.
Yeah,
yes.
so
that would have been, I think, a maybe a better matchup. And my heart's with that one as well because they're a Conference USA team that plays Utah. So I would have loved to have seen that. I mean, part of it just personal for me, but it would have been good.
Yeah, absolutely. And
did the FAU coach already sign with somebody else? Is he leaving or?
I don't know. I'm not sure about
nothing that I'm aware of with that.
Oh, okay. Maybe it's
big
somebody
news with
else.
that.
Yeah, I think Florida Atlantic would have done better, but like everyone's saying, you guys all have good points. I mean, it's just unfortunate that big man couldn't make his free throws in the end, but But they're really good offensively. FAU surprised me how good they really were this tournament. Because they were kind of they were the last Cinderella left. I guess you could say being a 9 seed, but And here's just a fun fact. I told my friend at work I was going to mention this. Jack knows him. My work buddy Sam Jansen. We had a little work tournament going on with March Madness, and everyone, because he doesn't know basketball the way we do. Not saying he doesn't know anything at all, but he's not diehard, and he's just he just knows a little bit here and there. We did work brackets, and he won the tournament work, and he literally picked no joke. He picked every game by a flip of a coin, and he had San Diego State in the Final Four in his bracket, and everyone was like making fun of him. I'm like, dude, no way, you're gonna get killed this tournament. And he had FAU going to the Elite Eight, not because he had knowledge of the game. He literally made every pick.
What the what?
All the way to the end, and he beat all of us. All the big basketball guys like us, man. He smoke checked us, and he doesn't know half of what we know. I mean,
wow.
It was. I was like, oh my god, this guy had FAU going to Elite Eight and San Diego State in the Final Four in his bracket, and he was picking up points left and right.
I could see UConn, but not FAU and San Diego State. Except for those 7,200 that picked that, which still boggles my mind.
The reason why I had UConn was because the reason why I had UConn in the Final Four because I was lucky enough to see them early in the season, or like middle of the season, after they got done with having their 6-game losing streak. I saw them play. They kept on showing them out here in Washington State on Fox or one of the channels.
Yeah, they did.
On Saturday morning games, and I saw them play
early.
I saw them play more than any other team this season, like 6 or 7 times, and I knew they were good because I saw Sonogo, I saw Hawkins. I was like, oh yeah, they got a team, man. They're like locked in on defense. So I was just fortunate enough where I saw UConn play a lot of games out here, even though we're completely on the West Coast. Like I saw them more than anyone else.
Right.
So I had a feeling about UConn. I just wish I would have picked them in my bracket to go all the way, but I did have them in the Final Four. But,
Yeah, I don't see that Danny Hurley leaving anytime soon.
Oh,
No. I think he's gonna do great work
Oh yeah.
with UConn and build his own brand. I mean, if you can start off with a championship, now you build a dynasty and and put your name on the court. So
How long has he been there for? He's been there for like. How long has he been there for now?
he took over for who? Calhoun, was it, or?
I thought someone was there after Calhoun. I can't remember his name.
Because they went through some struggles, and he built the program.
After Calhoun left.
Ollie was there for a while. Wasn't Ollie the last one to win it now?
Kevin Ollie, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. They won it when they beat
14.
They beat Butler, didn't they?
Yes.
Yeah, the last championship was 14 until now, 9 years.
Yeah.
They beat Butler that year.
Well, I think we'll probably be in a treat for next year. I think everybody's learned a big lesson in this tournament, and not to underestimate underdogs and mid majors. Because
oh my God, right?
I think this is the first year in my generation and in my existence you didn't really see a dominant expected team to go show up in the championship with everybody picking Bama and Houston and Texas and Gonzaga and Kansas and Purdue and Marquette and everybody else.
God.
I mean, we were just pretty much blown away with all that nonsense. And so, I'm sure next year will be a treat because I think everybody's going to start second and third guessing their choices with the thought that this could potentially happen again next year. So, I mean, that's what makes March Madness the badness, because it gets you thinking. But, who knows? And we may not be surprised and see some of the Blue Bloods get back on top again. You know what I'm saying? And you got to put UConn up there. They are considered a Blue Blood as well because, they've had several championship runs, within these past, 30 years or so. So at the end of the day, you got to give them where credit is due. But, I'm excited for next year. I'm excited to see what these teams are doing. We could talk transfer portal, NIL, jacking stuff up or whatever the case may be. Like I said, I'm a firm believer players should be getting paid, but I think at the end of the day, the one and dones are getting a run for their money because people like UConn and FAU and San Diego State and the Creightons and all these other teams that have been together for a good minute, had developed a wonderful chemistry and showed how far chemistry can take you, in this tournament. So I loved the way this tournament ended. I loved who went in there. Miami, I knew they were going to be good this year. I just didn't know how good they were going to be. And you
had a good call on that one.
Shout out to Jim Larranaga's team, man. I mean, he built that team. And they stuck with it. They stuck together. Everybody didn't jump and go pro and all that stuff, even though they had potentials. So, that's something to think about, man, going into next season.
I got something for you guys. Do you guys think Purdue will lose in the first round 4 years in a row next year?
Wow.
I wouldn't put no money on it.
I ain't gonna bet on it. I mean,
no.
but at the end of the day, I just, listen, no team is safe. No team is safe.
No team is safe. I think it's in their head. I mean, really, now, when you look at it, you're going against, you got the one and dones versus the ones who commit to wanting to do something. You know what I'm saying? With the team, and credit to these coaches who convince these players, like, look, we can really build something great if you stick with it. We may not be able to do it next year. We may not be able to do it the year after that, but maybe in 3 years, as we're developing in my system, we stick together.
chemistry is being built, and man, these teams showed out. FAU
Yeah.
showed out. San Diego
Yeah.
State showed out. Give them credit. Yeah, Miami showed out. All these teams that built these programs, the Princetons and all these people, man, just showing out, man, said like, skip a one and done. You know what I'm saying? Skip NIL money. We're going to show you how to win a championship. We're going to show you how to build a team, so, that's hard for coaches to do and to really convince them. But so you got to really do your best to convince them. But, when you go to a small school and not a whole bunch of brand and resources, you have the ability to do that and to keep these players convinced is, and building that team and starting them and selling like, we're good enough to compete with the best.
Yeah, that was a nice surprise to see. I think everyone, and we mentioned it last show, Dwayne. I think everyone was really happy that there was a lot of new blood in the Final Four, and there was more upsets this year than any other year. Yeah, I think, and plus it gives like the teams you're mentioning, Dwayne. It gives those teams hope. Like, hey, if they can do it, we can do it. Like,
most definitely right.
So yeah, I think the smaller schools are going to stick together. And you mentioned like in one of the very first earliest shows when we were talking about that, because I think Monty had a question like, hey, is it just a fluke or are these smaller schools getting better? I remember Monty asked that, and then Dwayne had a good answer, and he's a great answer, and he said, I don't think it's a fluke. It's just because they have team chemistry. Like, these guys have been together when they're seniors together, and they've been roommates for the past 4 years, and they're best friends, and they just know each other in and out on the court and off the court, and they have other good guys maybe around them. They get a couple, 2 or 3 more good guys, like a real good starting 5, and maybe a couple of nice guys off the bench. Like, these smaller schools can compete now. My dad even mentioned that too. Like, that's what's different between football and basketball. Football takes 11 guys on offense and 11 guys on defense, so there's 22 guys. Basketball, it's like that Hoosiers movie. You just need 5 good guys and maybe 2 or 3 good guys off the bench.
That's it. That's a good one. That's right.
Yeah, my dad had a good point on that. I talked to him yesterday. He's like, yeah, you need 5 guys. You need a couple of good subs in case guys get hurt, guys get in foul trouble. The deeper you are, the better you are. You want probably 10, but if you have at least 8, I think you're pretty solid. 9 is just a blessing. But if you have a good 8, I think you're good. And the smaller schools are just getting better, like Dwayne said. I mean, I don't think it's a fluke. I don't know when the next time we're going to see a 116 upset, but I know we're going to see it again, like Monty mentioned too. I don't think it's going to be like
we'll see more.
I don't think it's going to be like once every 30 years anymore. I think it's going to be like it's going to dwindle down. I don't think we're going to see it every year, but I think we're going to
4 or 5 years.
Yeah, 4 or 5 years or something. Yeah,
that's a lot. Yeah, so I agree to for sure agree with that.
So I mean, I learned a long time ago that no matter what team sport you playing, if you have good chemistry, it could really, really, really supersede and overpower anybody that's just great. You're talking about your David and Goliaths type situations, you know what I'm saying? So if you have good chemistry, that will make up for a lot in gameplay, and so it's just awesome and crazy to see. But I think maybe a changing of the times, a changing of the guard, who knows? But it was very exciting. This is one of the most exciting tournaments I ever seen. Even though my bracket was busted, I mean, I kept eyes on the game. Kansas State really blew me away. I mean, goodness gracious. I mean, they got them a team, so who knows, but nonetheless, we could be on here talking all day, but as we know, we need to go ahead and close up on this latest episode of From the Grid to the Rim. Does anybody have any parting remarks real quick?
Just like we've been saying, leave your comments, subscribe. I appreciate the 11 subscribers we do have so far, 12.
Thank you.
Thank you. But yeah, leave comments. You don't have to agree with us. We're not going to get our feelings hurt if you disagree about something. We're here to talk. Yeah, we're here to talk, man. Because it's sports, man. There's always difference of opinion with sports about multiple things. So we're cool with that, man. Just let us know what you think, or let us know what you want us to talk about. We can talk about it wherever you guys want.
Yeah. Got draft coming up. Got a lot of things coming up. NBA playoffs, which I'm interested in that. The draft, a lot of good stuff. So welcome your comments, and we're looking forward to hearing from all of you out there. That's for sure.
Watch out for the Suns.
Yeah.
Yes.
Check that out. Well, anyways, ladies and gentlemen, we just want to say thank you for joining us on this latest episode of From the Grid to the Rim and everything in between. Again, this is just our opinion and how we talk sports, and we just want to have fun with it and fun with you with it. And so, again, please subscribe, please like our comments, please leave a comment, please give us your opinion, and we just love to hear from you and just get some of your feedback as well. Other than that, we're going to go ahead and close out. Thank you for joining us again, and we'll see you on the latest episode From the Grid to the Rim and everything in between. Y'all salute and have a good one, gentlemen.
Later.
Good night.
All right.
Take care.